Welcome to week 4. Last week, in week 3, we spent a lot of time talking about the second part of the structural frame. And we talked about and provided organizational charts and looked at roles and responsibilities, the reporting structure of organizations, and the various types of hierarchies that we might find. Most of us provided a simple hierarchy for the organizations with which we work. So we showed reporting, and then we talked a little bit about the responsibilities and whether we have already defined position descriptions that would include perhaps even the authority and accountability for the positions in a clear way, so that when one person is interacting with another, then a perhaps provider-customer relationship would be understood even within inside your organization. And you would know clearly that Stephanie is in charge of this and Alan is in charge of that. And how they work together is described in their position description. And that's where we want to get to with an understanding of the hierarchy, the reporting structure that is oftentimes the way really people look at organizations anyway. So once we have that clearly in hand, and then this week we're going to have 2 ways that we're going to kind of tidy that up. The first is that we're going to have a paper that's due on the structural frame. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then we will have a short quiz, 5 questions also on the structural frame. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. We are moving this week for 2 weeks to talk about the human resources frame. Human resources frame has a metaphor of family. So now we're talking about the people and how they're motivated or sometimes disincentivized to work together and in a common goal social system. And sometimes we find that without really recognizing it, we have disincentivized people to work together. We've created a competition because there may be scarce resources in our organizations. And sometimes that is to the organization's overall detriment with respect to achieving an overall mission. So take a look at Exhibit 6.1 that would talk about the models of motivation at work. We even have a course on models of motivation and how you would apply that for the workplace training and leadership. And you might want to check into that if you haven't already. So take a look at that course. Dr. Rob teaches it, and I think that for any of you, you would benefit from taking it. Let's see. If you want to find out when it is available, then just shoot me an email, and I'll get that to you. I should know that, but I don't off the top. Then we would look at really what the literature tells us with respect to how managers look at their employees, assumptions that they make. And an important thing to know, especially for those of you who are in a managerial role, that the way that you hold expectations of your employees very often gets you exactly what you expect. It's a self-fulfilled prophecy. So that if using theory X that you believe your employees have little ambition and so must be led, you need to micromanage them and you need to be sure that you check up on them in a regular way because you don't believe that they will do the job that they've been hired to do if you don't look over their shoulder. Then the literature shows us that's exactly what you get. Interestingly, if you happen to be a Theory Y manager and you believe that in a very self-directed way If you give a person an assignment, that person's going to go out there and creatively, self-directedly achieve the goals that you and the individual have set for that assignment. And that's the way it happens. So consider that as you are managing your employees. Even consider that as you look at how you are managed as an employee. So that's an important thing to understand in the workforce. There are other things that we want to check out with the human resources frame. And you might want to take a look at the various kinds of things. For example, just some possible human resources issues might be how we handle downsizing and how we handle a dilemma that should an organization be adaptable. So in the airline industry, they just cut their workforce to be adaptable. They don't keep them on. They hire them back, assuming they're going to be there. So another way of handling it is to outsource. Even to, in a global way, have them outsourced to another country. So, for example, I was just looking into a Medicare situation. You know, I'm retiring, looking into a Medicare situation, and one of the contenders for a provider has just moved all of their customer service to the Philippines. And so we've got one that we're looking at that's in Boise and another we're looking at that's in the Philippines as far as getting hold of an individual. Which would you choose? And it may be that the Philippines is the right choice. We just don't know. But it might be that we want someone closer to home. And so how customer service is handled is one of the adaptability kinds of issues that an organization needs to have in mind. Now, when we're talking about loyalty rather than adaptability, then long-term commitment to people, is that what they want to do? And if they do, there are organizations, for example, I am in an organization where I will receive a pension, but many organizations are cutting the pensions because they can't afford them. And so loyalty, are people going to stay loyal to their organizations or not? Fewer and fewer millennials and even Xers are staying loyal to companies. So how do organizations weigh those various options of looking through the human resources frame at making decisions about adaptability and loyalty? So these are things that we're going to be talking about, and these are things that you'll want to consider for your organization as a possible issue that you're going to be viewing. Now, we're not choosing a different issue for the human resources frame than for the structural frame. So if you've chosen an issue, communications, loyalty, something else in the paper that you're going to be writing for the structural frame, you'll keep that for the human resources frame. And then for the political and for the symbolic frame as well. Speaking of the paper, do look at what the requirements and instructions are, including the rubric for the structural frame. Our papers are going to be worth 10 points. The structural frame paper is due on February 9th. So that's next Saturday. Okay, the quiz also is going to be due February 9th. It opens up tomorrow, Sunday, on the 3rd. And actually, I'm opening it up on the 2nd. Many of you are going to be watching the Super Bowl, so probably will not be in actuality taking the little quiz. The quiz is going to be, there will be 2 opportunities. Each opportunity is 60 minutes. And again, 5 questions and worth 5 points. So for those of you not watching the Super Bowl, it'll be open. So you can go ahead, even though it says the 3rd, it'll be open on the 2nd. All right, coming up, we will have a human resources frame paper that will be February 23rd, and a human resources quiz, also due February 23rd. But right now, we're getting started with just beginning the human resources frame. Let's get started.